Right, well welcome to what is now part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of this Corvette C5 restoration series. So this car is almost ready to get back on the road, we're nearly there, we're so close. Fingers crossed we pass its MOT in about a week and a bit's time. And just to recap what we've done, I've got a playlist up here on the right if you want to see parts 1 to 5. Shows you all the work we've done in this car so far, including the restoration of that roof, which took a lot longer than I thought. Some engine stuff, some brakes, some tyres, some lights, some electrical issues, some window issues, engine squealing, blah, 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 loads of stuff. And the first thing I mentioned when we got this car was that it had a parasitic draw on the old battery. And I'm just going to show you exactly what we've done so far to address that and what tests we can do now to see if the draw has got to an acceptable level or diminished completely. Right, so the first thing we did was replace the old rubbishy battery with an Optima red top, which has got the ports on the side and the 2 ports on the top, which are really handy for charging it with your C-Tech. Now I had this car sitting in the garage for about a week, and to run the battery tests, you want to make sure that your battery is fully charged. So just to make sure, I've got it on the C-Tech just now for a wee boost, just to make sure it's sitting up at the 12.5 or above volts that it should be. So ideally the battery should be sitting at 12.6 to 12.8. Real life, I don't ever get that. I get about 12.4, 12.5 if I'm lucky. But I've had batteries last for 7-8 years on 12.4 volts or even less when they're sitting resting, so I wouldn't be too concerned. But what we're going to do, first of all, is a test. The first test to see if we've got any obvious parasitic drain. You can do this without any tools, without any equipment. You simply need to get into darkness. So let's go and try that test first. No, don't adjust your phone or brightness or anything. I'm in the dark. I've turned most of the lights out in here because we're doing the first step of the parasitic drain test on this car. So now, this has worked for me in the past when I've just basically turned all the lights off in the garage, had a little look-see inside the car, and you can pretty much see if a glove box light's on, if a headliner light's on, or if a trunk light's on, or something like that. So you can pretty much see straight away if you've got an obvious no-no. But in this case, I don't have an obvious no-no. Everything's in darkness, and everything's gone. And once this little light times out, it will get even worse. But I don't think there's anything. I've got the hood light detached, so it's not going to open even if I left it unlatched. It's not going to come on, sorry, if I've left it unlatched. But essentially, you would see anything in the interior giving off a glare if there was anything remaining on light-wise. So that rules out that one step. Right, now the second thing you can do is simply leave your car locked for a few days and then come back and test the battery voltage. So it does tell you a readout in this car of what it is, but I've not been trusting it because mine constantly says 11.1. I know the battery's brand new and it was sitting at 12.5 at least, so I ignore the one that's in the dash and we trust a little multimeter here. So to do that, you've got a multimeter like this, you set it to volts, and you set it to 20 volts because the battery's going to be about 12 point something, so anything less will short it. You want to set it to 20 volts, and you've got the positive lead hooked into the volts and the negative into the common, and you simply hold the positive node onto the positive battery node and the negative one onto the negative battery node. Alright, so before you connect your multimeter up, you can always do a quick test on it to make sure it's working. So most multimeters will have this little symbol here in red, kind of looks like a sound or a Wi-Fi type signal. If you set it to that, like so, and you have both your probes, like so, I'll just put it down here so you can see it, and you touch them together, it should beep. Right, that shows you your multimeter's working and the leads are good. Now you can progress the rest of the job knowing that this isn't the fault. Alright, so we've got the voltmeter set up here so you can see it. The positive port, negative the negative port, and it gives you a reading of, you see that? 12.6 volts. That's pretty good. That's pretty bang on the money really, to be honest. That's about what you're looking for, a fully charged battery. Now, if you leave the car for a few days and come back and test that again, if that's dropped to like 12.2 or something like that, you know you've got a drain, right? Now, it's going to drop a little bit every day. You can work that out with the capacity of your battery and versus how many volts are coming down a day. But in general, they're going to drain a little bit, right? There's an acceptable amount, which is usually about 50 milliamps. Anything more than that is considered an excessive drain in general. So what we've got here is a fully charged battery, and I'm going to just do a battery test now with my little top-down battery tester, which will do same as that, a volt test, but also cold cranking amps test and a charging test as well. Now my voltage is going to drop a little bit because I've got the hood open and I'm going to open the doors and stuff like that, and the lights are going to come on. So it might drop a little bit, but it doesn't matter. As long as it's not within a huge amount, it's going to go down. It's going to be fine. So let's crack on with the top-down battery tester test, and I'll show you how to use one of them. The batteries with the ports in the top are so handy for stuff like this. We OK it. We can go battery test. And this is an AGM flat plate. Cold cranking amps on this one is, oh dear, 815. So we got up to 815. Go, 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 go. This is one of the cheaper ones. You can't just type it in. You've got to just scroll through it, which is fine. And it'll test it out and it'll tell me if it's good or not. Just do this in real time. Yes, there we go. 12.36 volts, healthy, 100%, charge 60%. So don't be panicking. If a battery's got 12.4 volts or whatever, it will say 60 to 70% charge. That's normal. And then you charge it with the alternator, it will go up to 100%. But don't let it drop below, or once it starts hitting 10.5 volts, you're kind of struggling. That's going to be the battery dead. So what we'll do now is we can do a cranking test with this car. We'll run a cranking test on it and we'll see what that says. Alright, so my microphone died when doing this, but basically what you do in the top down is you set it to cranking test, hit OK, and it will say start engine. And it gives you 30 seconds to sprint round the car and start the engine, which I'm doing right now. I think I get it at about 20 seconds. And once you start the engine, it'll automatically do its cranking tests, and you'll see the voltage of the battery drop, probably about 10.7, 10.8, give or take, as it's cranking. And then it will go back up, and it should go back up to 14 point something as it starts. So you'll see the screens there's changed to RPM detected, engine's on, and it automatically runs a test, and you go to see it's dropped to voltage 10.7, and it says good crank test. So if it drops below about 10.5, battery's probably on its way out. So I'll come back around here and just show you that screen. There you go. So it's voltage 10.73, and it says good. So that means it's passed the cranking test, battery's got a good enough charge to cope with the car cranking, and it's worked. So I'll now go into the charging test. Just go down to option 3, hit charging, and hit OK, and it'll do a ripple test. It will then do a loaded test, and it'll ask me to go into the car again and rev it up to 2,500 RPM for 5 seconds. There we go. So I'll put this down, and I'll run round to the driver's side. This is when it helps to have maybe a buddy or someone to come along and help you. And you go, I've got it charging normal, I've revved it up to 2,500 RPM, and it will come up with a charging normal, which means it's loaded, tested, and it's unloaded, tested, and you can see there, they're both 14 volts, which is absolutely perfect. And I'll probably come back round anytime now and lift up the top down and bring it closer to you. So it's handy to have someone else in the car when you're doing this. But you can do it by yourself. It just means you've got to do a bit of running around. There we are. Loaded testing 14.8, unloaded 14.87, charging normal. So that's good. Then you can go back and review the data. So we've got a good battery health, 100%. It's got a good charge on it at the moment. We did a good crank test. It only went down to 10.73 volts. So that's good. And then our charging is working. So the alternator's charging the battery properly. So all the electrical systems are doing their bit when it comes to the battery, and we are all good. So that's it. That's a cheap little bit of kit. I'll leave the link in the description. Right, if you don't have one of those battery testers, you can hook up your multimeter to both battery ports, set it to volts, and as you can see here, I've been faffing about with the car at this point and putting some lights on and off, so the battery voltage had dropped a little bit. But you can still hook it up to the battery, get in the car, crank it over, and check what voltage it drops to, and then check what voltage it sits at when the alternator is supposed to be charging the battery. So a few bucks for an altimeter can do that, but I prefer that little battery tester because it just gives you the word good after it to make sure you know everything's okay. Alright, so you've seen that as I was cranking it over and starting the engine, dropped about 10.56 volts, slightly less than the previous test because this test was actually done before done all those repairs, before I changed the belts and pulleys and before we charged the battery up to its optimum 12.6, 12.8 resting range. So it does drop a little bit, but still acceptable. And as you can see now, it's charging at about 14.6, close to 14.7 volts. Again, a little bit less than the previous test, but this was done before I made all those repairs. Plus, I'm faffing about in the car at the moment, turning lights on and stuff, turning the radio on, and just basically causing a little bit of a drain on that number, so it's not ideal. But anyway, it shows you that the multimeter can do the same job. If you haven't got a multimeter, I would strongly suggest getting one and learning how to use it. It's really handy when you've got a car like this, then you need to check things like the battery voltage. But anyway, both of them give you peace of mind that the battery's charging as it should be and it's got a good charge on it at any time. So there we have it, little multimeter, less than $10 for this one. I do have better ones than this, but this was just one that I used as an example for this video. Excellent. Alright, so now we're going to do an actual parasitic draw test. Alright, so what we do is, you want to connect this amp meter in series to the battery. And what that will do is connect a lead, as I see here, a crocodile clip, onto the negative cable. And then you would connect the negative port here onto the negative node here onto the negative port of the battery, which basically has a signal going between the two of these where it goes through your voltmeter. And that allows you to do a 10 amp setting here, and it will show you what the amp draw is on the battery. But before you do that, you want to lock the doors, close the trunk, and well, I disconnected this light under the hood here, just so I know that's not going to draw anything on it. I know that's not a problem, so I'm just disconnecting it for the purposes of this test. And you want to leave the car. It's going to take about half an hour for the system to completely go to sleep, roughly. So if I look at the clock there, that's 20 past 12. If I come back at least 10 to 1 or after, I know the car's completely going to sleep and we can see what the readout is on this meter. And that will give us an idea if we've still got a bad current draw that's enough to drain this battery in a matter of days, maybe even sooner. So let's test that out and we'll see how it's looking. So what we've done now is we've connected the multimeter up in series to the battery, and as you can see, I've moved the red lead from the volts to the 10 amp port. Black one's still in the comment, and I've set the multimeter to 10 amps. And the red cable is connected with a crocodile clip onto the negative cable of the car, and the black cable is connected to the negative port of the battery. Just held it on with a zip tie there. And as you can see, we're reading 0.2 amps or 200 milliamps, which is far too high, but the car has literally just been woken up because I've just connected the battery, and you heard the tape player in it maybe going there. So we leave this now sitting until the car completely goes to sleep, and this number should drop to 0.05 or below. Then we know we're good. At the moment it's far too high, but it will drop after about, I want to say half an hour, but we're going to time this one and see how long it takes this to drop. So doors are locked, trunk is locked, this is open, but I've disconnected this light so it doesn't give us a false reading, and that way we can see
exactly what's happening with this car when it's going to sleep. So let's come back in about half an hour and we'll see what this number looks like. Alright, well it's been about 5 minutes, so I just thought I'd come out and show you this. So it's dropped from 0.2 to 0.13. It was 130, it's about to go to 0.12 maybe. 130 milliamps, which is still over double what you'd like this to be sitting at. That will still drain the battery in a few days, so it's just, you know, give or take. Don't know exactly, but it will drain the battery. So that's only been about 5 minutes. And if you've ever seen my Mercedes SL video, I did the very same test on the Mercedes SL battery, and it sat about 0.11, 0.12, very similar to this, for about 25 minutes. And then it dropped all of a sudden to 0.05, 0.04, which was acceptable for the car. So let's see how long it takes this to go down to the same level, and we'll come back and check on it. 25 minutes for me, 2 minutes for you. Oh yeah, when you're doing this, don't be tempted to open the doors or put lights on or anything like that, because it will just jack up the reading and make you have to start again from scratch. Plus it could blow your multimeter fuse in here as well. So leave the car alone, don't touch anything, and when you've given it half an hour, if you're still sitting at this point, I'll tell you what to do after that. Right, so that's been 29 minutes and change, nearly half an hour. As you can see, we're still on 120 milliamps, which is over double what we'd like this to be sitting at in terms of a parasitic draw. So maybe give it another wee 5 or 10 minutes just to make sure it doesn't drop, and then we'll come back and see what we need to do about this. Alright, so while we're waiting on this, hopefully going to sleep a little bit more, the way you can work out how long a battery will last on standby or on you know, when the car's not in use, your battery will come with a capacity, see that there? It will say 50 amp hours, right? So my cold cranking amps is 815, and then the one 2 down from that is 50 amp hours. And what that means is, if this reading was 1.00, as in 1 amp, it means it would take 50 hours, so 2 days, to completely drain the battery. Right? A fully charged battery would take 50 hours, give or take, to drain it in its entirety. So we're not at 1 amp, we're at 0.1 amp. Let's just say, for argument's sake, it's 0.1. So that should take, what, 500 hours to drain the battery? Right, so as that stands now, that battery would drain in somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks, give or take. So we can work it out exactly with 50 amp hours and 0.12, but if it was 0.1, it would be 20 days to drain this battery. This is 0.12, so you're a bit less than that. So you're between 2 to 3 weeks, give or take. Which, it's not great, that's too high. Anything but with 0.1 is too high. It really should be reading 0.05 or below, and that's perfect. But I suspect these cars are going to drain a little bit more anyway. But, you know, you're going to get a fortnight out of this battery before you have to worry about it. And you're going to get at least a week with it. You know, if you start it once a week and drive it once a week, this shouldn't be an issue. But we'll give it another 10-15 minutes, maybe even a full hour to completely shut down, and then we'll see what the reading is after that. So let's come back later on. Right, now, in real life you wouldn't leave that a fortnight, because you don't want to let the battery drain to a point when it's almost at its minimum. So really you have to be coming out and starting the car once a week, or do what I would do is put it on a trickle charger, which we've got somewhere lying around here. There we are. So that's my C5 charger that I would use. And if I wasn't using the car for a period of time, I would stick it on that. However, let's let this go down, we'll just make sure this is the resting rate. If you suspect you've got a battery drain, you've got 2 fuse boxes in the C5. There's one right there, and there's one under the passenger footwell within the car. So clearly, to get into that one, you need to open the door. So what you should do is, if you need to check fuses for circuits that might be causing a drain in the passenger footwell, open the door, get a screwdriver, put it in the lock here, and I'm going to maybe need 2 hands for this, but you basically push the lock twice to click it shut.
That way the car thinks the door's shut, but the door remains open. Right, hold on a minute, I'll show you. As I close the door, you get a screwdriver in here, push it once, and it'll click once, push it twice, and it'll click twice. That's the door locked, right? So the car thinks passenger door is closed, and you can make it go to sleep. And it will still give you options to go in to the passenger footwell and see what the fuses look like. Let's have a look at the fuses. Right, so passenger footwell, there's two clips at the top there. Take your mat out, you open these clips up, these ones here, and pull two of them, and that'll give you access to the fuse box. Bump, bump. Out we come. There we are, see? Fuse box is in here. And if you've got a good one like me, you'll have a diagram on the back of your fuse panel telling you what they all are. Number 5 is radio CD, hazard lights, BCM. I wouldn't touch the BCM, I would try the rest first. You get Bose stereo speakers and all the rest of it. So what you can do is, if you've got to about an hour and your parasitic draw is still sitting about 0.1 amps or more than 0.05, we can start pulling each individual fuse here and see if the reading drops. Okay, so I'll just show you that. Right, so that's been an hour now, and we're still reading 120 milliamps, which is too much. It's going to drain the battery in about, I'd say less than 2 weeks, if I'm brutally honest. You wouldn't let it sit for that long. I'd say you need to charge it once a week, something like that. So let's try and pull some fuses and see if we can get this number to drop. Right, so what we do is we go into the fuse box, and you can start pulling fuses and see if one of them will drop the voltage. So the first fuse there, fuse number 1, is the cigarette console lighter. So the 12 volt port basically in the console. So if we pull that, I've got the amp meter, the voltmeter set up in the window so I don't have to get out of the car and see it. We can see if that number drops. So let's try that one first, and we'll continue on. Right, so that's me pulled out fuse number 1. You can see the empty one right there. And the reading is still 0.12 volts. Right? What we do now is just put this fuse back in and try fuse number 2. Right, so that's me pulled out fuse number 2, which is there in your diagram. This one here, which is above that relay there. You can see the empty port, but we're still reading 0.12. So you just keep going with that and you start pulling fuses until you hit one that drops that voltage. And the only one I wouldn't bother touch first of all is one that's marked BCM. You can try everything else. So looking at this, fuse 3 is a lumbar support, fuse 4 is the SCM, which is seat control module, and fuse 5 is a radio CD, and then fuse 6 is a parking lamp. So we can continue on with these ones and see if we can get lucky with the voltage or the amp meter drop. Alright, so this is the point we've been stuck at for quite some time. I've reconnected the alternator just to make sure that was it, and that was the only other thing I disconnected to try and figure this out. Aha! We have found it! Alright, so here we are, and we've got to the stage now where I've pulled out every single fuse in this panel. Nothing made a difference. I've pulled out every single fuse within the passenger footwell panel. Nothing made a difference. Then I got to scratching my head a little bit, and I thought, right, okay, the headlight motors and the headlights here, the pop-up headlights, can be an issue on these cars. And the fuses for those are numbers 3 and 4, which as you can see there. Headlight motor right hand side, headlight motor left hand side. And the headlight motors are controlled by a little module underneath here. And as you can see here, I've pulled out number 3, which is the right hand module. and it's made no difference to the amp draw here. It's still 0.13, 0.14 amps, and that one does make a little noise when we're starting the car up. But watch this. I'm going to pull out number 4, which is the left-hand side motor, which I can never remember what's left or right. This could be left, I don't know. Anyway, we're going to pull out number 4. Out. Straight away an instantaneous drop to 0.03 amps. Right? So let's just put in number 3 again, just to make sure it's not anything. If I put in number 3, it goes back up. So you have to remove both 3 and 4 to get this to drop. And I suspect if that's the case, let's just prove a point again. Both are out. If that's the case, then the module that controls the headlights is probably gone bad, which is a common fault with these cars. Or, no, well, I'm not going to say a common fault. It's something that's known on the forums, isn't it? Yeah, so it's something that's kind of been spoken about for a while. But I am so pleased to have found this, I can't tell you. That one there is the left-hand side one. And removing both of them takes us, they even dropped to 0.02 there for a second, which is absolutely perfect. So it's the headlight motors that are causing the problem here, which we'll do in another video, because the point in this video was to get us to this stage, which is the perfect draw on a C5 Corvette, 0.02, 0.03 amps. And it's something that's been bugging me since I've had this car for a couple of months now. But I left this till the end because what I did just logically was to fix everything else on the car, fix everything electrical, including the passenger windows and the lights at the back, make sure the belt was charging the alternator properly, alternator's connected, everything's good. And then now that I know everything else is fixed, we came to this issue, and it's the headlight motor. So that is an excellent draw. That's what you should be getting. And I'm going to have to source possibly a new control module, but for this video, that's us. We've found the drain. Right, so that's been very successful. That's exactly the point I wanted to get to with this video. I hope this has been of help to you. It certainly has to me, because at one point when I was removing each fuse individually, as I would normally do, it was driving me daft. And of course the C5s have got pop-up headlights, so the motors work off one circuit because they both come up at the same time. So you need to pull both fuses at the same time. So that just occurred to me this morning. So anyway, that's great. I hope this has been a good help. Please like, please subscribe, and please comment below. I wanted to do a battery parasitic drain test with a real life problem and get to the source or the issue, and not just leave it as, you know, you can pull that fuse, and if this number drops, blah, blah, blah. This is a real life issue. This is one that's actually on this car, and it's dropped from 0.13 that was sitting at to 0.02. There you go, 0.02, 0.03, which is perfect. So I really hope that's been of use to you. If you've got a C5 and it's got a battery drain, fuses 3 and 4 on the 1998. They might have changed in later years, I don't know. But try them first. Save you a lot of hours of working like I had to do here. And that's excellent. So please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next C5 video. Thank you.